All right, guys, welcome back to the Bow Nose podcast. This is episode 5. So, just wanted to quickly shout out the holiday season. I hope everyone had a amazing holiday season and happy New Year. Safe, fun time with family and stuff like that. We're in 2024, so that's exciting. I feel like 2023 was a blur; it just flew by, but wanted to welcome everybody into the new year. Wish everybody happy New Year. So, episode 5. Uh, Show will be on YouTube, and you can listen back on any podcast platform, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. So, anyway, it's been a couple weeks since I put out a last episode. For the holidays, I always travel back to the Midwest. So I do live in Boston, as y'all remember, but I am from the Chicago, so I drive back to visit family and stuff like that. But we're back. So back to weekly stuff. Again, 30 minutes or less is the goal. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the college football playoff semifinal matches, which were the games were incredible. And then we're going to preview the national championship between Washington and Michigan. We're going to talk about the Bears as well, because obviously, I'm a Bears fan and Justin Fields advocate. And the Bears have secured the #1 draft pick for this year's coming draft. So what the Bears should do with that, in my opinion, what I think they're going to do with that pick, in my opinion. I've been getting some DMs and tweets on my thoughts about NFL Comeback Player of the Year award. Is it Damar Hamlin or is it Joe Flacco or Baker Mayfield? Things like that. I think it's a silly award or it's not a silly award. It's a great award, but I think it's silly how much pushback people are giving on who should win it and stuff like that. And then obviously the NFL picks of the week 18, it's going to be electric, a lot on the line in terms of playoff scenarios. So excited to watch all those games unfold as well. So let's start with the college football playoff semifinal bowl games. So we'll start with Alabama and Michigan. And first, before I get into these games, I'm definitely going to let you guys know that I completely whiffed on both my picks. I thought Alabama would take care of business. I thought Texas was going to take care of business, and just went 0 for 2. So I'm here to tell you, full transparency, taking accountability. I was definitely wrong on so many levels, but again, that happens in sports sometimes. But overall, taking notes on both of the games, Michigan was just the better team. And I thought, the evil empire that is Alabama, it's like the classic, they sneak into the playoffs and then, they overpower whoever is in front of them in the semis, and then they go win a natty. I thought this was just going to be classic Nick Saban somehow figures it out. And I do think this is probably one of his best coaching jobs, given the roster that he's had and the QB play. They started 3 different QBs this year, and then going back to Jalen Milroe, who ended up being the guy. But I think overall, Nick Saban did a crazy good job with this Alabama roster this year. But then they ran into Michigan, and a lot of people had question marks on Michigan. The Big Ten, people will say, had a down year. And did Michigan play anybody? Their defensive stats were great, but it's like, who did they play? So I was really worried about that going into the game. They kind of had a similar story when they went up against Georgia in the semifinal, and then they just got blitzed by Georgia. I thought, that could ring true again. Ultimately, it didn't. And I totally underestimated Michigan's defensive line and how well they would perform against Alabama's offensive line. Now, offensive line for Alabama, not the Alabama offensive line that we're used to. Definitely had some liabilities on that offensive line all year, and it was definitely exposed in this game against Michigan. And Michigan overall, their defense, they probably have 7 NFL guys on their defense. So and they definitely showed it in the semifinal. Jalen Milroe was in hell all day. Couldn't really get anything going. 133 yards passing. Did get some rushing yards. 63 yards rushing on 21 carries, but 16 to 23 for 116 yards passing. It was just a tough day for the Alabama offense to get going, and a lot of that was because of how good Michigan's defensive line was the entire day. For Michigan's offense, people have question marks on JJ McCarthy. I don't know if people fully believe in JJ McCarthy. I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I think he's above average. Do I think he's like an elite NFL QB prospect? I don't think so yet, but I think he's going to, obviously, I think he's going to come back and play another year. And, I think he could be one of the top QBs in next year's draft. But overall in this game, he was efficient. 17 to 27, 221 yards, 3 touchdowns, did everything that, Jim Harbaugh asked of him. And then in terms of the running game, they ran efficiently enough. They ran the ball for 130 yards as a team. Blake Corum, uh, you know, felt comfortable most of the game. Had some decent runs, and overall they chewed up time of possession and really controlled that game throughout. Even though that they came back at the end, I thought watching this game the entire time that it was Michigan's game, not to lose. And yeah, so I was definitely just wrong wrong about Michigan. Hands up. I will take whatever pushback from, especially from my Michigan friends out here in Boston. So shout out Parker, and Alex and other Michigan faithful. Yeah, I was just wrong on that. But so moving on to Washington, Texas. Again, apologies to Washington fans, and I also need to look into the camera and say an absolute apology to Michael Penix Jr. because I completely whiffed and thought it was just a matter of time before everything would catch up to him. He's battled injuries. He's had like 3 season-ending injuries during his tenure at Indiana, and I've always kind of just thought, he puts up a lot of yards, but like, it is he good? But he's elite, and I think that he's going to be there's little of bust potential I see out of Michael Penix Jr. because of all the attributes and the arm talent, the ball placement, the different types of throws that he can make. He can drop it in the bucket. He can put it on you and tight windows, the anticipatory throws, the back shoulder throws, the rail shots down the sidelines. Like, he has the full arsenal of throws, and because he was a really good athlete when he came into Indiana, even though he's had some injuries, like, he's still a very, very good athlete. So moving around in the pocket, he can run if he has to, but um, he's just been so good all year. And I mean, Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. It's a regular season award. I totally understand that, but I think Michael Penix has been the best QB in football. So to him, to Washington, I do apologize. And yeah, I was wrong on that. So um, and for Washington, I knew they're not a big running team. Dylan Johnson, he also got banged up. So TBD about his status for the national championship game. But, they haven't been like a huge running team all year. Texas's D line is incredible against the run. So we knew they weren't going to get a ton of yards there. But Michael Penix had 300 yards passing in the first half, just literally just dotted Texas's defense all over the place. And combine that with Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, like, Texas just had nothing for their receivers, and their offense is crazy, man. And people talk about Washington's defense. I think their defense held up for the most part the entire game. They didn't have to do too much, but Texas, fumbling 4 times and losing 2 of those fumbles really set them back. So I think offense, defense, Washington outplayed Texas. I think that game, it ended up being close, but that game, honestly, just Washington controlled that game throughout, and it was a really good game. Both games were really good. As a Florida State fan, obviously, I'm still mad that FSU didn't get into the playoffs, but after watching those semifinal games, I'm okay. You know what I mean? people saying that Florida State can beat 63-3 or whatever it was. It's like committee got it right. Those people are idiots. Florida State had 26 people out, and 15 starters out. So those people wouldn't have sat out if we were in the playoffs. So that similar product wouldn't have happened in the playoffs. Do I think after watching both of these games that they would have beaten any of these teams? I think they would have put up a good fight. They could definitely have competed against Alabama. I think in terms of Washington and Texas, I can't say that the the current state of FSU's team would have put up too much of a fight against Texas and Washington, unfortunately. But Alabama, uh, you know, I I think that we were better than them, as is, and if we had Jordan Travis, we definitely would be able to compete with any of these teams, honestly. But such is life. I'm good with it. Moving on to the Natty, Washington and uh, Michigan. This game is going to be awesome. There's two different dynamics. You have Michigan, who runs the ball very, very well, and then you have Washington, who passes the ball very well, and then you have Michigan's defense versus Washington's offense. It's kind of just like something's got to give, and that's generally what happens in these championship games. But my main thing for this game that I'm really going to be looking at is if Michigan's defensive line can disrupt the timing of Washington's offense. If you look at Washington's offense, there's a lot of anticipatory throws, there's a lot of timing routes like back shoulder throws, things like that, a lot of levels concepts that they run. And if Michigan's defensive line can disrupt that timing and get pressure, in the middle of the pocket to where Michael Penix Jr. can't step up in the pocket, that'll definitely ruin some timing throws. Or if they can somehow collapse the pocket, like contain to where he can't, sidestep to the left or the right. I'm really interested to see, that battle. Washington's offensive line is also very elite, so that's going to be the number one battle, in my opinion. I think Michigan's going to be able to run the ball well against Washington. I think offensively, Michigan's going to be able to move the ball. It's just a matter of who's going to get a stop. And is JJ McCarthy, can JJ McCarthy put together a game of his life? Kind of like the Alabama game. Can he be efficient? If he has a similar game, 221, 2 to 3 touchdowns, I think Michigan has a good shot in this game. If he has, 2 touchdowns, maybe 2 picks, or maybe a fumble or something like that, if Michigan turns the ball over, then I like Michigan, or I like Washington, and kind of by a lot. So I think what happens is if Michigan starts fast, they'll win. I think if they go up, 10-0, something like that, I think they will be in the driver's seat throughout the game. But main difference between Michigan and Washington is that Washington is equipped to play from behind. So if they go down to 2 possessions, they're not going to worry about that because they can go get that in minutes, right? Michigan, on the other hand, is not equipped to play from behind. So they have to play with the lead in this game if they're going to have any chance of winning. But if this comes down to a couple possessions or late in the fourth quarter and 2-minute 2-minute drive scenarios, I like Washington's QB a lot more than Michigan's QB. And who's going to make more plays. So but overall, I do think Michigan is going to have a good start. And then I think they're going to go up multiple possessions. And then Washington is going to storm back late. So I have Michigan winning the national championship over Washington 34-31. That's the correct score bet that I placed, but I also did place Washington plus 4.5. So I do think Washington covers, but I do think Michigan ends up winning 34-31. So we'll see. I've bet against Washington so many times this year, and they've proved me wrong every single time. So, if this is another case of that, then I'll come back next week and I will say that I was again wrong on Washington, and I'll have another sincere apology to Michael Penix Jr. and the Husky Nation. So we'll see. Moving on to the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears have secured the number one pick in the NFL draft again via Carolina. So this move kind of looks like one of the biggest fleeces of all time in terms of the return on our investment with that trade. So we traded our number one pick last year. We got a bunch of other picks. We got DJ Moore, and we didn't trade this pick last year expecting to get the number one pick the following year, and um, that just so happens to what's transpired here. So there's a lot of different routes that the Bears can go with this. There's the camp that's like, we have to get Caleb Williams. He's a transcendent player, and we should restart our franchise with that. And then there's the other camp where I fall in to where we're right we're kind of right there if you look at how the roster is constructed. And I think that if we didn't start so horribly, like we didn't start 0-4 this season, I think that this wouldn't even be a question. Say that we won 2 of the first 4 games, right? Looking back at the regular season schedule, lost at home, got blitzed against the Packers week 1. Fine. We're 0-1. If we beat the Buccaneers like we should have in week 2, we're 1-1. Then we get stomped by the Chiefs. Fair play, right? But if we beat the Broncos, we're 2-4, right? So add 2 more wins. We're 7-9 right now. So if we were 9-7 and we have the number one pick and we have the potential to beat the Packers this weekend and go 10-7, this is a completely different conversation. And there's not even really a conversation. It's we trade back, we get a bunch more assets, and we can still get a wide receiver, offensive lineman to build around Justin Fields. I feel like the only reason why you would draft Caleb Williams, especially if Justin Fields goes out this weekend, eliminates the Packers in Lambeau Field, with all the improving that him and the team has done over the course of the second half of this season, the only reason why you would draft Caleb Williams is if you want to reset the clock in terms of like QB contracts, and you get Caleb Williams on that 5-year rookie contract, right? And that's not a thing. Like, that's not a good enough reason. I'll tell you why. Sure, you can reset the clock like the QB contract. However, when you do that, you bring in a rookie QB. They're not going to get it their first year. I don't care how good you are, right? So that's resetting the entire team because there's a learning curve to being a quarterback in the NFL. If you trade back and you get multiple picks for this year or next year, you can still get a bunch of help for Justin Fields. Say you don't get Marvin Harrison Jr. because you do have the Cardinals lurking at the number 2 pick, and if they stay with Kyler Murray, then they'll probably draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Fair, right? But there are so many good wide receivers in this NFL draft. You have Malik Neighbors, you have Rome Odunze, so many other options that you could trade back, still get a high quality wide receiver, and then you can go get offensive line help as well and build around what we already have. We're just missing another wide receiver or 2 and some offensive line help, and Justin Fields could take this team to a Super Bowl. Forget just the division. The division is wide open in the NFC North. There is no clear cut, like when the Patriots were dominating the AFC East, and that was just assumed every single year that they were going to be the AFC East champion. It's not like that in the NFC North, and it's wide open. The Vikings are a dumpster fire. The Lions can't. They're having a great year, yes, but they're still kind of the Lions. Like, they will drop a game like they just did to us. We should have beat the Lions twice. And the Packers, I will take a step back on my Jordan Love hate a little bit. I don't think that he's better than Justin Fields or his ceiling is as high as Justin Fields, but I think Jordan Love's played way better than expected. However, I don't think that, the Packers are also like assumed NFC North champions. So the division is there for the taking. And if you draft a QB, you're just setting yourself back another year or two before you can really compete for a division. And not only that, if you're focused on resetting the QB contract clock, what about all of the other positions on the field? Like, you're just wasting those years of everyone else. Um, if you trade back this year and you get a bunch of assets, you build around Justin Fields. If Justin and you stick with him for 2 more years. If he doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. And you have a roster ready to win right now. And then there's going to be another QB in a couple years that would come out in the draft, and you could be right there and scoop him up. I think you have to build around Justin Fields. He's improved every single year in terms of his completion percentage, his passer rating, his touchdown to interception ratio. And this is all a miss of instability every single year. He's had different coaches, he's had different offensive coordinators. Um, Offensive line hasn't been healthy. Um, Things like that. And of course, of all over the course of all that adversity, he's still improving. Is it leaps like we would like? No. Like when Josh Allen figured it out, right? That was a huge leap. Justin Fields hasn't had that yet, but has he had the opportunity to have that? If you look at what's around him, not really. Think about his decision making, right? Could he have some reads that are a little bit better sometimes? Yes, but that's everybody. But his pocket awareness in terms of like knowing when to run, when knowing when to check the ball down, that has improved year over year. And if you don't think so, you haven't been watching enough Chicago Bears football. Some detractors. He still fumbles way too much. Averaging over a fumble a game since he's been in the league is unacceptable, and that needs to be addressed, which I think, those things are gonna continue to improve. Think about the stuff about him being a leader. He has such a big voice in the locker room now. Developing a relationship with DJ Moore, that has grown over the year. Darnell Mooney has had a down year, but he still praises Justin Fields, and he's like, "That's my quarterback." The guys in the locker room love him, and the fans at Soldier Field are now starting to realize what we have here and are embracing him as well. The team loves him. The city loves him. Resetting the team again by drafting Caleb Williams, that's only going to ruin all the momentum the Bears have, especially if they go in this week in week 18 and stomp the Packers in Lambeau and you knock them out of playoff contention. There's just no way you could just ruin that by drafting Caleb Williams. Is Caleb Williams a more accurate thrower of the football than Justin Fields at this moment? Yeah, I think so. I think he's a more pure passer than Justin Fields. But can that stuff be improved? Yes, but if you look at Caleb's overall build, he's not as big as Justin Fields. He's not as strong. He's not as fast. The only thing that he has on him is that he's just a little more accurate of a passer. And is that enough to set your team back multiple years while we onboard Caleb Williams? I just don't think that we have time to do that. Um, the trade market for Justin Fields right now is a second and third round pick. Is that enough to make you want to set the clock back on your team? The Bears and Justin Fields going into week 18 have such an opportunity to go into Lambeau, make a statement that this is what it's going to be for years, knocking them out of playoff contention. Justin Fields has a great game and just takes the reins of the position and say, "This is my team." I do think that's what happens. That's what I'm hoping is happening. We've been seeing all these stats on ESPN and SportsCenter all year that, Jordan Love has passed for more yards than any QB, any Bears QB ever, right? One, I don't care about that stat because one, the Bears have always been like a running team. We've never had like a spread offense, like air it out offense. We've never had that. So for that stat to be floating around, I couldn't give two shits. The Bears have had defensive coaches the majority of my lifetime. The Packers have had offensive minded head coaches since I was born. And so that's just bound to happen. So that's not a big deal to me. But I do think the Bears go into Lambeau, put it on the Packers, and make a statement and have a ton of momentum going into next year. And I do think that the Bears are going to stick with Justin Fields. That is my hope. That is my prayer. It needs to happen. But okay, so gonna quickly touch on this because this is kind of just a silly debate to me. The NFL Comeback Player of the Year award. So this has been a thing on Twitter. People saying that Damar Hamlin shouldn't win it because he hasn't played a lot. It should go to Joe Flacco or Baker Mayfield, which I think are both really good candidates as well. Baker Mayfield has had such a resurgence of a year, and Joe Flacco was on the couch until midseason and then has come back and led the Browns to the playoffs, which I think is an incredible story too. Those are good comebacks. But Damar Hamlin literally has had the biggest comeback possible in the NFL. He literally died on the field and came back to life. What bigger comeback story? What's a bigger comeback story than that? Literally died on the field, came back to life. I think that is the definition of comeback player of the year. I don't care that he's only appeared in 2 games and has 2 tackles and had 1 bad penalty or whatever. He literally came back from death and is playing in the NFL. Whether he dresses every week or is on the field every snap or makes 10 tackles or 2 tackles, he came back from death on the field, worked super hard to get back onto the field. There's no bigger comeback story than that. The only people that have come back from death are Damar Hamlin, Jesus Christ, Meg from Hercules. That's it. And he's in the NFL. This is not a discussion. Joe Flacco has had a really good year. Yes. Great story. Baker Mayfield, really good year. Awesome story. This is Damar Hamlin's award. And they should rename it the Damar Hamlin Award. End of discussion. People are mad at Damar Hamlin on Twitter for living, which is crazy. What is wrong with these people? Twitter's a crazy place, man. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on that. So my NFL Week 18 picks of the week, powered by DraftKings, are as follows. I have the Texans -5 over the Colts. The Texans win, and they are the AFC South champions. Lot to play for. I think CJ Stroud has a good game. Puts it on the Texans, or puts it on the Colts. So I have Texans -1.5. Bears money line, homer pick for sure. I don't care, but I believe the Bears and Justin Fields have everything to play for, and I think they go into Lambeau and stomp the Packers. And then I have Miami money line over the Buffalo Bills. They just got blown out by the Ravens. So anytime that I see a team that has been blown out by in their previous week, I do think that they come back refocused, and I think Miami beats the Bills in Miami. The winner also wins the AFC East, so lots to play for there. The Bills have won 4 straight, so I think this is kind of a letdown game. So in the end, Texas -1.5, Bears money line, Miami money line over the Bills. Those are my 3 picks, powered by DraftKings, and that's the show. We're pulling up on 29 minutes. So again, I want wish everybody a happy new year, and show will be available on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify as well. So I will talk to you guys next week after the Natty and Week 18. We'll recap that, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, see ya.